So far we've talked a lot about depreciation, bonds, payroll. Um, so let's just go to like the next important thing. Vacation, I suppose that could be something. Um, that could be something that's like a really important thing. There's no think about. Vacation is also important. And how like you would journalize this. So like let's say that the employees have earned vacation pay, 25,000 for the period, right? Um, Pension formula determines pension cost, 139,250. Only 105,000 is contributed to the pension plan administrator. So let's first journalize the entry to record this vacation pay. Um, Vacation pay expense. You debit, for example, 25,000, and then the vacation pay payable. If there's an expense, eventually it will become a payable, credit payable. You debit the expense, debit the liability, uh, the payable, then you credit the payable. The credit payable. The pension benefit. Where is it? Okay, so here is for pension date, account, debit and credits, debits and credits, um, pension expense. Um, well, they were supposed to contribute 139,250, but only 150, 105,000 was actually contributed with cash, so the unfunded pension liability, pretty much, the remaining amount that wasn't contributed, the unfunded amount, 34,050. So like that's how you would journalize vacation pay. Okay. Um, Installment notes. Installment notes are pretty important. It's like bonds payable. It's like notes payable. What is the difference between a bond and a note? Well, bonds and notes are very similar. Essentially, they're both like ways to issue debt securities. Um, but like notes are like not as long term. For example, like a bond, you would typically see bonds being well, you would see them being like 20 years, really, or like 10 years at least. Um, and a bond really is more like, oh, so like a bond, well, that makes more sense because I was wondering, like, I was like, why would a bond have a market rate if it's being issued by the bank? You know? So like a bond would have a market rate because it's actually like a debt security issued by a group of investors, not necessarily like a note. Like a note would have sort of like a fixed rate or like a contract rate, pretty much, an interest rate, because that would be what it would be sent. It would be set by the bank. But the bonds, they could have like a market rate because like this bond might be put out into public to see if like that bond would want to get purchased by other investors at a different market rate. And then like there might be like a discount or like a premium on that bond because of like um, the debt, the person that the bondee might be like a person that has like better credit rating, so like the bond might actually be paid out at a premium or vice versa. But so like this note installment is very similar to a bond. So like for example, on the first day of the fiscal year, right, a company issues 45,000 of a note, okay, at 8% interest rate, and the rate the year 6-year installment, right? So it's saying that the annual payment is $9,734. Let's see, 45,000 times 6. 36 annual payment of $9,734. Oh, okay. Well, that's the interest. So, like, this note would have to be repaid annually, regardless of the interest. You see what I mean? So, like, because this note is 45,000, um, across 6 years, right? Well, the thing is, like, how this works is that, for example, year 1, year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not gonna be like you pay 75,000 across all 6 years flat. You know, it's not gonna be like that. Rather, there'll be a certain amount of annual payment that you would have to make, regardless of how many years and how if you were gonna divide it equally to repay back the 45,000. So, like for example, $9,734. $9,734 plus $974. Personal payable. Because the thing is, there's gonna be what is this? 45,000 times 8% interest. So it'd be 75,000 plus 3,600. Okay. The interest that would occur every year would be 3,600. And the interest repayment would be 6,134. So the interest payment, for example, 3,600. The interest payment is going to have to be paid off regardless, and then the remainder would be the principal payment. So 9,734 minus 3,600. All right, 6,000 134 would be the principal payment, like how much of the principal is being paid back. Okay. So after the first year, 45,000, how much of the principal is left is $38,866. And then you guys can, for example, well, is this compound or well, the thing is, every year the interest would change. You guys see? Because the principal has gone down. So after the first year, the interest payment's only $3,109. So for example, if you still have to pay that amount, $9,734, and you guys paid that interest amount, so like the new amount is actually $6,624.72. Okay, so you're now paying off more of the principal. Okay, so now the remaining principal would be 32,24128, and then you guys see 28 times 28. So like every single year, you guys have a smaller and smaller interest payment because the principal is smaller, and you guys would be paying off more of the principal. You would be paying off more of the principal with your annual payment. Okay. As you guys can see, $25, well, is $25 times 21.2.36. 734 minus 7601. 251. So like by year 5, the interest payment has gone down. As in like the amount that you guys have to pay on the principal, because the principal has gone down. So like you guys can pay off more of the, the principal. So 83352 754. So if you guys can see, by the 6th year, the interest payment is $731. So that means that by the 6th year, you can make an interest payment. You can make a payment on the principal of $9,002.03, and the remaining principal on the notes payable. Well, there will still be a balance of $147.71. But like, if the note has a lifetime, or like this note has like a 6-year agreement, as in like this note's going to be paid off in 6 years, you would have to still pay that off, so it would go to 0. So for example, by the 6th year, the principal payment, although like technically it should only be $2,002.03, would actually be $9,149.74 to make this zero, and then the note has been completely paid off. And the total amount of interest that was paid on this note, $13,501.80. So like to borrow this amount of money for 6 years at the interest rate of 8%, you guys have to pay back $58,551.71. So it's like, it's pretty simple stuff, you know. You guys have to pay $13,000 to borrow $45,000 at 8% interest rate in 6 years. But the thing is like, the important thing here is not like interest rates, or like the important thing is not like paying more money or paying less money, or like having like a really long installment note, or like a really short installment note to pay less money, or like the principal, or like all this other stuff. What we care about is journalizing this. Like, what we want to do is, how do we journalize this? So like, the first thing you guys would want to do in this journal, so like let's say on the very first year of the calendar year, January 1st, right, you would receive cash for this amount, 45,000. Okay, and then there would be a notes payable of 45,000. Okay, so that's how you would journalize the issuance of this note, basically, right? So like, now let's journalize the first annual note payment, because the annual note payment, it's gonna be most likely by the end of the year, so December 31st, year one. Interest payment, alright? Interest payment, as we already did the calculation, 3,600. Like that, 3,600 would be interest payment. The notes payable, because we're going to pay off some of the principal, $6,134, and then it would be coming out of cash. Okay, so like cash would decrease by $9,734. So like, for example, like, let's say, well, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So like 6 years of making interest payments to this. Let's see. As you can see, you guys have to make these interest payments. Interest payment. This interest payment. Alright. So the interest payment by the 6th year is going to be $731. And then the notes payable, like the interest, the principal that's gonna be paid, like so, because you still have to make that annual payment of $9,734 regardless of how much interest payment you're making, because that's going to go towards the principal. But by the 6th year, to close out the account, to close the account down. Oh, is that correct? 7. Hold on. $731 is the amount of interest. So you gotta pay that. The remainder is $9,002.03, which is the principal. Wait a second here. But the thing is, I suppose what would happen, because that's, what is that? Is that the remaining principal? Yeah, that's the remaining principal. So, it would actually be this, which is like a little, so like it's gonna be a little over the annual amount. But like you would, most likely this is what would happen. It might have like a different thing to say, like this is what we did to close this down. Because you're not supposed to make, well, you can actually make a larger payment, but the thing is, this thing is supposed to be closed out by the 6th year. Alright. So as you guys can see, by the 6th year, you guys would be making a larger payment than the $9,734. But if this is done, for example, the important thing is this to be in balance. This should be in balance. Yeah, it's in balance. So this is balanced. Yes, let's see. Okay, and that would close the account, pretty much. If you guys have any questions about installment notes or whatever, it's very similar to bonds, which we had a video about.